Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bourbon Bites Whiskey Reviews with an 80s twist. I'm your host, Clifton, and today we are having a very different kind of stream. I feel like I know I was off last week. I was traveling for San Diego Comic-Con, had a blast there for work and also for a little bit of fun, too. Unfortunately, I came back a bit under the weather, so if you can tell by my voice, I'm not feeling 100%. I do not know if it's COVID or not. I don't know. I'm out of tests at the moment, but I do know my tastes and my palate are very limited today. So, what a great time to bring on a guest to the stream, one that is not new to the channel. Y'all are very, very familiar with her. Y'all have maybe listened to my podcast where I interviewed her, or you've just chatted with her in the chat or on our after party hangout. So, please welcome to the stream our guest for the evening, Emily. Emily, welcome.
Hey everyone, y'all behave. I can't wrench from here, so Donnie's in
Yeah,
charge.
we are down one wrench tonight, so I'm relying on the other folks in the chat. I see the Linux Cat is here. Who else is a wrench? I think Whiskey Dick's a wrench. There's enough trust. That's enough people to trust.
I'm sure it's fine. Everybody pretty much usually behaves.
Oh, great question, Donnie. He said it's the correct mic on. That's a great question because it doesn't look like it is. Give me a second. Do I sound a little better now?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Better. Okay. Okay, it was using my webcam mic. Thank you, Donnie. Man, y'all are so good. Calling out my technical. That was weird. That's never defaulted that before. That was weird. But yeah, Whiskey Dick is here. Five Fingers is here. Taste and Sensibility. Mike, I think might be the first time seeing you in the chat. Welcome to the chat. Good to see you. Of course, Kathy Joe, Women of Whiskeys. They had a fun. I think it was a birthday stream last night, right? I missed it, but I think I saw a little bit of it. William Hall is here. Tony Bag of Donuts. Ozma in the Dark. I'm not sure who this is. Also, someone new. Is this some? Maybe are these your people, Emily?
Mike, yes. Long story short,
Oh, really?
yes. I cross promoted, and yes.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. Well, welcome to the stream. So glad to have y'all. Like I said, my name is Clifton. I do mostly whiskey reviews. I do throw in some gaming every now and then, but super excited for tonight because Emily messaged me a long time ago to remind me that July is Disability Pride Month, and I just finished like LGBT Pride Month in June, so I get 2 Pride months. I'm very, very happy. For those of you that don't know, I am a right arm amputee. So it's hard to see on the screen, but yes, I've been missing my right arm since I was about 2 days old, I think. I don't really remember, something like that. Yeah, I'm just lived my whole life this way. So I like that I get to celebrate a little bit, especially celebrate with other members of both communities, which is why I'm so glad to join you, Emily.
Well, it's good to be here and talk about things that I find important, especially in the intersection. So, because communities are all diverse and everybody's just from everywhere, so everybody's important.
That's really great to hear. I see Donald Rance is in the chat. Mullum is here as well. Some great new folks. So glad to see y'all. Like I said, I'm live here every Thursday night. Hit subscribe if you want to come back. Have a fun stream planned next week with Doc Swenson's, which is a brand out of Washington State. I've had them on twice before, so this will be the 3rd time. They have some really fun new experimental casks. So yeah, welcome all folks, whether you are new to whiskey or old to whiskey, which kind of brings us to our subject at hand. So I was talking with Emily and I was trying to find, what's a good topic that we could bring up that both connects whiskey drinking and some of the struggles or issues people face that are in the disability community. So I thought what would be cool to do is do a how to make whiskey more accessible. And I mean that in 2 ways. One, for the newcomers, the people that are your friends that you're really trying to get into whiskey, but you don't want to give them like George T. Stagg, but you want to get them into it and ease them into it. But 2, how do we make tastings more accessible for people who may, use a wheelchair or maybe visually impaired? I mean, there's so many things that I don't take into consideration very often, and I think we should consider that because, I mean, like Emily said, it's such a diverse community. There's a lot of crossover. So I'm so glad to have her here and to talk about her experiences, maybe what's felt limiting, what's felt welcoming. And yeah, Emily, do you want to, take it away?
Okay. Excuse me. I think one of the first things that I try and start with is tasting anything is really starting from a culinary perspective and a culinary experience. So even before you get into spirits at all, we all have experiences with food, that we're all going from, to start off with. So, really, I think I'm sorry, excuse me again. The starting point for me usually is, really just one, we all have a culinary experience. It just comes from different directions. And two, um, it you really have to meet people where they are, whether it's
Mm,
from an experience point of view with like their culinary background, or whether it's a physical issue or another sensory issue that they're dealing with. So if somebody comes to you when you're planning a tasting and says, "Hi, I really would be very interested to participate. What is your
mhm,
bathroom situation like?" The correct response is not, "Well, why do you wanna know? Nobody's ever asked before."
mm,
Obviously, everything meets ADA requirements, which I'm here to tell you, even for public buildings, that's not really accurate. Even
right.
in the year of our internet, 2023, that's not a universal thing, and, like, when I go in anywhere, even if it's not an official event, um, I know where the bathrooms are.
Mm,
I do, like, a dry run in a restroom pretty much every time I go into a new place. If I'm gonna be there more than an hour, if I'm gonna be
gotcha.
there and intend to do a tasting and, like, expect that I'm gonna be consuming liquids of any
Right.
kind, I
Mhm,
need to be confident of where they're gonna go after I've consumed them. So I wanna have
definitely.
all that planned out beforehand, and the reality is too, especially if you're imbibing into
Mhm,
the adult beverages, everybody can appreciate a good grab bar.
mhm,
Everybody can appreciate somewhere else to hold on to and, keep themselves vertical. As we tease Jason on Mash and Drum periodically, stay vertical.
mhm. Right.
Um, so that's one very kind of basic thing, from my experience with that. The one in-person tasting that I did attend was actually a wine and chocolate,
Mm,
tasting, and I was so impressed, one, because I asked all the questions, I'm like, "Okay, so standard issue, like, can I get in? Is it gonna be okay? Like, have you planned for" because they had stations set up for different things.
mm,
Is there enough room? Like, is there two-person the equivalent of, like, a two-person walkway throughout the whole event?
right.
Is that already set up? Like, are you all cool? So I did the full run of, like, probably 10, 20 questions, and not only did they not, like, argue or act like it was a ridiculous question, the girl who I had been on the phone with actually came up to me at the event and shook my hand. It was like, "I hope we got everything in order, like, if there's anything we need to know for the future, let me know." And I was just like,
Wow.
"Well, this
That's
is an impressive experience.
I
I
was
think
gonna
I'll be."
say, yeah, that's a really incredible experience. I think, a lot of times, like at least some bars that I've been to, when they have like a tasting, it's like sometimes it's often like a little side room, like it's not even in the main bar. And there's some pretty tight
Exactly.
like entrances to get in and out of those. And I'm just imagining like one of those situations, if they have the tasting pre-set up, what do you do in that kind of situation? You show up, you're here for the whiskey tasting, and you realize I can't get there. And then it's like, they have to serve you outside of the room. And that's just like uncomfortable. That's a place you don't want to be in, I imagine.
No, and the whole point is if I'm going to an event, I wanna be where everybody else is.
Mhm.
I wanna be where the event is. I don't wanna be in, like, the cordoned off, not VIP section, the "Oh, we
Right.
forgot about you" section in the
Yeah.
back corner behind, the storage closet.
Oh god.
Um,
Yeah.
so the whole point is being able to interact, with everybody and really build community. And also at that same event, it just by sheer luck in like 2015, well before I discovered whiskey on the internet, like everybody at my table except for me had gone to the bourbon trail and done the whole thing. And I
Ah,
was like, is this an omen? Like, what's going on? This isn't even a whiskey event, but Apparently, I should look into this because
I
it
will
was
say, so I've only been once, and it was back in 28 end of 2018. And I did notice we actually had someone with us that I believe they weren't they were just temporarily using wheelchair. I think they broke their leg or something like right before the
yeah.
trip. And a lot of the distilleries actually had obviously thought of that, the big ones, right? Like the Wild Turkeys of the world and like the Buffalo Traces. So I thought that was really cool to see that. But there were also some of the smaller ones that there weren't accommodations for them. And I'm hoping that like things like that make them realize like, hey, maybe we should think about that. I mean, I think like I mentioned earlier, like a lot of times the tastings are in a separate place. I know plenty of bars have either a downstairs like speakeasy or an upstairs area. There's, as far as I know, there's no other way to get there but the stairs. I mean, what do you like? It's just crazy to me.
Well, yeah, and a lot of places don't think about that until somebody asks. And the thing is,
Right.
I love if I'm gonna go for a cocktail, I love a vintage cocktail. So like the speakeasy from an experience point of view, that's where I would rather be.
Mhm.
And it's not fun to be really excited for a certain aspect of a place to get there and realize, oh, there's a flight of stairs
Right.
between me and them. Or, oh, yeah, the accessible bathroom, but there's only 2 stairs between me and the restroom. That's
Uh,
super helpful. And by helpful, I mean not helpful
oh
at
my
all.
gosh. Yeah.
Um,
And by the way, I was going to say, people in the chat, feel free to ask like questions, whether it's about that aspect of things or the making it accessible. I've got to be careful of that word.
yeah.
Accessible to newcomers as well. I think this is an open forum. Feel free to ask your questions. To share us your experiences, whether it was you or someone you know that maybe had a not so great experience because of something like this. I'd love to hear that. I see Adriana says so true. Greater accessibility is actually helpful for everyone, and I could
Right.
not agree more to that, Adriana. Cheers to you for that. By the way, I'm drinking Knob Creek. I'm drinking Knob Creek rye. Emily said she was drinking a rye. What were you drinking, Emily? You told me about it a little
I
bit.
am drinking a Golden Beaver Chico Creek straight rye single barrel,
Hey, so you
which
said it was out of California. I've actually never
yes.
heard of this distillery. I need to call on Brandon. I don't know if he's in the chat. He's always my like go-to California craft distillery
Oh,
guy.
I'll link you after. It's fine.
Definitely.
It's great.
I see some few folks joining us. Steven Sussman, Jeffrey Wack, hello again. Zofer 1920. If I missed anyone, feel free to jump in and chat. By the way, congratulations to Adriana for her fundraiser
Yes.
for Alzheimer's research. Someone's asking what her grand total was. I'm very curious as well. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that I had to miss that. I was traveling for work, but man, y'all go watch that replay. It's an awesome time. It was her and Women of Whiskey's collaborating. So much fun. So
And Mike Stahl from
yeah,
the other pubcast that I can't remember the name of right now
uh,
was there too.
Livewire Whiskey. Oh, that's still
Yes, that Livewire, that crew.
yeah. I
Mike
haven't
and
watched the full
Frankie were
thing yet.
there.
I have it like bookmarked, so I'm gonna go back and rewatch the rest. Wow, she raised $12,464.
Yes.
Awesome.
And you can still get your t-shirts and count towards her total. So go buy the merch and represent for her there, because obviously it's super important. And I am so proud to be a microscopic part of Team Winch. So thank
Absolutely,
you
you
for
are
that.
a huge part of the community. Taste and Sensibility says events I've attended have thought way more about accommodating newbies than those with various disabilities. I think
Right.
and it's not that I necessarily like a lot. Okay, I'll say this: a lot of tasting events are hosted by people who aren't event hosts, right? They're just our friends who like happen to like whiskey and invite people over. There are the ones that are in like the restaurants, but a lot of times people are inviting people to their homes, so they're inviting them to, a small gathering place. And I think that's not the first thing on their mind because let's say they don't have anyone in their home that does need these accommodations. So
Mhm.
I think it's a good learning experience for folks. I don't think it's, I know it's always got to be that awkward moment when they realize, oh shit, I should have thought about this, but I think it's good for them to think about it in advance, which is the point of this stream.
Yeah. And I try as much as I can, especially if it is a planned event, even if I think it's going to be kind of frustrating, maybe for the people putting on the event. One of the reasons that I take the extra couple of steps to try and get as much information specific to the event as possible beforehand is because I would rather know beforehand
Right.
than be stuck once I get there. One of the other things that is really helpful is if you have a variety of seating options. So it's not all high tops
Right.
and it's not all at the bar.
Mm.
As a I am fortunate enough that I have a standing function on this particular chair, so I
Mhm.
can actually go to the bar and stand for
Awesome.
periods of time.
Mhm.
However, that's not always viable for a variety of reasons. And
Right.
when I'm in other chairs or in other situations, there are a few things more annoying than trying to drink or eat and having everything be like basically up your nose
Yes,
because that's not where you want it to be.
and that's something that I've witnessed because I had a friend that I went to a whiskey bar with, and it was back in the Carolinas, and he also used a chair, and there was no, you know how like a lot of bars have the lower level of the bar for that.
Yeah.
This one didn't. So it was one of those situations. I mean, you kind of joked earlier about being like shoved in the corner by a storage box. That's kind of how we were. We were shoved in
Mhm.
the corner of this bar because there was absolutely nowhere for him to sit comfortably. And it did. I was like, something that I hadn't thought about, but like being there with a friend, like it's something that like just opens your mind to these things. And I think, Whiskey Mountain's made a good point. She said, especially in the virtual whiskey world, it's easy to not know. So all the better to think ahead and have options for most possibilities. This is great to bring to our minds.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Like I said, even like people don't even know that I have one arm. When I meet them for the first time, it's always like, wait, what? What?
Well, I
So
mean, that's different than the standard YouTuber. I didn't realize how tall or short you were kind of thing. Because that's the typical, like everybody envisions everybody at the same height, right?
right, right. Yeah.
Um, but yeah. So, but in terms of other types of accessibility that's less overtly to mobility, um, if you're doing a tasting and you have like cards or information sheets that you want people to fill out,
Hmm.
to have different options. So to have an electronic option for
Mm-hmm.
people to fill out. So one, if it's easier for somebody to fill that out on their phone, that's easier for them. It might be easier for them to reference that in the future.
Right.
Then also, if you happen to collect that information digitally, then you can also like send it back out to the whole group and get a better idea of what like the general consensus was. Um,
Hmm.
or different things like that. A thing to remember if you're doing that though is if you are using a PDF, which is common because a PDF is basically a modified image format. If somebody is visually impaired, you may have to take extra steps to make a PDF related file visually accessible at that point as well. But it still could be a barrier lowered for everybody in general, so that could be helpful as well.
Yeah.
Uh, one of the other things that I have a tendency to do, uh, because I've had a lot of practice at this kind of stuff, if I go to a venue once, I make it my business to know what all their glassware is. So,
Mm.
like, I know basically as subtly or not subtly as I can find like all their glassware beverage options. So I know are the coffee cups that I can handle because I have very specific criteria for handles that I can use and the handles that I can't.
Okay.
Do I need to bring my own cups to better mitigate that in the future, or do I need to ask for something specific? When I'm doing tastings for myself, because I have limited glassware options, I am not above doing a tasting in like a series of coffee mugs.
Sure.
Because I can like hold on to it really well and really get
Mm-hmm.
all the way in there and get all the scent related information that way. And that just simplifies everything. Other than that, I'm a big fan of like a good rocks glass with a wide base to it. And so if
Okay.
somebody goes to you when you're planning an event, and for whatever reason, if they ask you about glassware or whatever, if they take the time to ask, they're not asking to be annoying.
Right.
They're asking specifically because they have a specific reason to ask. And maybe that's something that you ask on your like survey or entry, whatever there. So if there is a question that somebody may have or a need that they might have there's not as much stress on them, and then it's just easier to collect all the information in one place. So so that's an option as well.
Yeah, that's something that I actually hadn't considered. I've been to so many tastings where they either give it to you in this tiny little flimsy plastic, like a basically a mouthwash cup. I've been to
That's the
those before.
worst. That's the
So
worst.
yeah, and that's, I mean, and I think a lot of them, they'll default to having Glens, and hopefully if they're at like at a venue that is like a restaurant or something, they would have an alternate, like you said, like a rocks glass or something that you can use. But again, like I think that's something that people, maybe when you're doing a tasting, like a small group at your house, maybe just be aware, maybe have some rocks glasses just on hand for situations
Mhm.
like that, or not even that. Let's talk about the other time of being accessible. What if someone doesn't want to drink it neat, right? What if they want to
Right.
have their whiskey over ice? Well, there you go. You got a rocks glass. You can either put a big ice cube in it, add some smaller ice cubes. I mean, I think that kind
Yes.
of leads into that part of the conversation. I think everyone enjoys whiskey differently. So
Mhm.
whether it's glassware for accessibility needs or glassware for just like they don't want to deal with like how we like to do with the Glen. We're always like all like being like, oh, now the front of the tip of your tongue, tilt it back this way. It's like, some people just want to enjoy the whiskey. So
Right.
it's like it's always a different experience for different people. So I think giving more options and more variety, the better.
Yeah. And it really is just, again, just finding different ways to meet people where they are. And again, going back to sort of the culinary perspective, if you're going to local type stuff, and if somebody either has to bring a designated driver or maybe they get overwhelmed with like too much sensory stuff at once, maybe you have local-ish, like, food-related stuff there, so if there's local honey available, if there's
Mm,
local jam available or whatever, to give somebody's palate a break or an update, or if for whatever reason they're at their limit as far as alcohol goes, but they
right.
can still participate in the sensory experience,
Definitely.
or
Well, yeah, and especially if like you're like you said, like if there's nothing else to do, if all that's there is the whiskey, then it's like, oh, what do I do with, like I gotta feel like I'm doing something. So, they tend to overdrink. I'm guilty. I've been there.
yeah,
So totally, yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Yeah, like you said, like food or just, having other beverages, like whether it's, fancy sparkling water or,
mhm,
something that you said can still excite the senses and allow you to explore a bit more, but also not get you wasted.
right, and if you are in a situation where you, can play into, the theme of your tasting, then, whether it's related flavors or crackers made from similar grains or local product or products that you wanna kinda pull in tasting notes from or whatever, um, that's a place to go. One of the things, one of the jokes that, Mike and crew have is "What the hell is marzipan?"
Mhm.
Because marzipan is a very typical, whiskey official, like, fancy tasting notes.
Right.
Marzipan actually is, like, basically almond flour and either powdered sugar or honey made into dough.
Mhm.
How many people outside of very, like, snobby European places, and I've had it and I like it and whatever, but I'm a
Yeah.
weirdo, so go from there. Like, most people don't actually have a taste reference for that. So, you could say something like almond butter. Not everybody has had almond butter, but a heck of a lot more Americans have had almond butter than marzipan.
Yeah, that's actually, I was looking through my notes that I kind of written down for both things, and I think one of the things is simplifying your language. Yes, it's always nice to kind of throw out all these like, oh, this very specific tasting note that like 10 people in the world have had, but also like, especially when you're dealing with people that are new to it. I mean, of course, with bourbon, you always default to the vanillas and the caramels, and like, yeah, that's probably the most prominent flavor that people can get out of them. But I think also in that same conversation, there's no wrong answers necessarily. So if you ask someone, like, oh, what does this whiskey smell like? And they say bubblegum or blueberries or whatever, they're not wrong. That's their experience. And everyone's, like smelling or, smelling journey. I don't know what that means, but like everyone
Yeah,
has a different like palate on the nose or the palate.
exactly. One of my pet peeves for across tastings and stuff is, like, everybody's palate and, culinary experience is individual. Nobody's ever wrong in their personal tasting, and you can't get in somebody's brain and correct it one way or the other. So, like, you can say, "Oh, well, I actually get this," or you can get them to drill down in terms of, "Okay, well, what kind what kind of citrus." When you say
Mhm.
citrus, like, what do you mean? Do you mean
Oh, you
lemon
call
or
me
do
out
you
all the
mean
time in the chat. You're like, okay,
right.
Clifton, be more descriptive.
I Yeah, it's my thing. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It
But
does. It
again,
causes me to challenge myself and like explore a bit deeper. And I think I saw a comment earlier. Chris said we enjoyed doing the flavor wheel at Woodford, the tasting for newbies. It's straight into straight
absolutely.
whiskey. Yeah, they break it out. It's very a simple straight a flavor wheel, but it like kind of has the layers to it. It has like, okay, I'm getting sweet, savory, then it kind
Mhm.
of expands beyond there. And I think, some people do get those like basic senses first. And if they're picking up on that, great. They're starting to appreciate the flavor. And I think that's a great sign. Even if that's how they leave the tasting. Oh, well, the bourbon is sweet and the scotch is smoky, Bam,
Yeah,
you've educated them some.
you have to start somewhere. Um, and we were all noobs once,
Yes.
and expanded from somewhere. Um, and I am a huge fan of whiskey and particularly rye, but really what it comes down to even more than that is the community.
Hmm.
Um, and as is probably kind of obvious at this point, like most of the channels where I show up the most tend to be like the smaller-ish to mid-size ones in general, with a couple of exceptions, because it's about the community and it's about building on those experiences. And like I have had some different culinary experiences than a lot of other people, but
Mm.
I don't have a collection. I'm not in a position to have or maintain a collection at this point. So like I don't have much to offer in that way, but I can cross-reference and know where to look for things. Or if I see somebody new come in with a question that hasn't been answered, I'm going to shout that out till somebody sees it and goes, oh, they're looking to buy a gift, or they want to know where to go from a specific place where they are or whatever. And
Hmm.
it's like, you don't have to be in the same place to try and be helpful to somebody else. So, like,
Yeah, I've always gotten excited when someone just shows a faint bit of interest into it. Like, just even if they're someone in the random liquor store aisle and they're like, "Oh, I like this. Like, what do you recommend next?" I love that. I've never considered myself. I feel like I try to be approachable with it. Like, I'm never going to come across as like, "Oh, you like that? Well, screw you," because like. I do see a lot of that in not our community, but just like the whiskey community, just online. There's a lot of like,
yeah.
I don't know if it's like a just like a not a power trip, but it's more of just like, oh, I know more than you kind of situation. I think that's not inviting, that's not welcoming, and I think that's what I strive for with this channel is to be welcoming to people of all backgrounds and all experiences. And I hopefully people that are in the chat are seeing that.
Yeah. Um, Unfortunately, I think part of what you're describing also comes down to is like, well, starting out lower proof or quote unquote lower shelf is something that you only do when you don't know better. And it's like, well, A, people have different resources at different points. And they have different frames of reference. So just because you can handle a higher proof than somebody else who's at a different place than you, that doesn't make you smarter
Mhm.
or in by default more experienced. Um, and like Bill just said, it is the Reddit kind of mentality, and
Right.
something is to kind of lord over other people, and that's just obnoxious. I am doing a really bad job with chat right now, but thank you
Oh no,
everybody for
actually,
the shout
I've
out and the
scrolled back up. I
support.
realized that there were some really great questions that came up. So I'm scrolled back up like 14 minutes ago, but like I'm gonna try to get through as many of as I can. Tony Bagadonut says, I found that almost everyone in the service industry has been accommodating to and polite towards my low vision. And that's also a conversation that I feel like, people that do have vision or is it auditory? Would you say auditory disabilities or, um, but people with that, like, how can we make whiskey tastings more accessible to them, whether they, can't read a label or they, are just tasting and they can't, let's say they may be deaf or hard of hearing. What can we do as a community to make them feel more welcome? Do you have any ideas, Emily?
Okay. Well, auditory, you went from low vision to then
It's
auditory,
two
and
to two
auditory
to
is
totally different
hearing.
things. I'm just saying,
I'm
like, that's a
sorry.
good segue. So sorry.
No,
I'm there.
okay. So just giving people options and making if you have an intake questionnaire, just to be flexible and to list as many things as you can, but also like literally have a line or a reference to either on your intake questionnaire or when people go to buy tickets, like do you have any other access needs? And
Mhm.
specifically open the door. But
Yeah.
like Tony was saying in his experience, the primary thing visually I think would be to like we had said before, to really provide digital options of forms, any forms that you're using or whatever.
Right.
The other thing, as far as reading for labels or whatever, if you can take pictures or get pictures
Mm.
of the labels, either beforehand or in your welcome packet deal thing, then again, if somebody's using their phone or their iPad or whatever other device they're using, they can then expand that as much as they need to be able to get most of the information. And also just again to be open to, if somebody asks you, "Hey, I don't remember the proof on this," or "I can't see what the proof is." The
Mhm.
correct response is never, "Well, obviously it's right there. Like, can't you
Yeah.
read?"
Yeah. I've
Um,
seen that. I've heard people say that too.
yeah, and to not be condescending or just to remember that if somebody's asking a question, they're asking it for a reason. Um,
Definitely.
Even if you don't necessarily understand the reason at the time you hear the question, and maybe you are frustrated or maybe, you're stressed out or distracted at the same time, but like y- if somebody's asking questions like that, they're almost never asking them just to be invasive or
Right.
annoying. They're asking because they want to know and they want to learn. One of the more frustrating experiences that I had that kind of put me back for a while was like right after Larceny came out with single barrels. I didn't know that they had done that.
Mhm.
Like my experience with the numbering that way was only with ECBP. And so I asked somebody like, "Oh, larceny barrels are doing like larceny's doing that now?" And they're like, duh." And I was like, "Well,
Well,
like,
fuck you.
okay, I'm not plugged into to whiskey news the way you are.
Right.
I wouldn't have asked if I knew that to be correct."
Mhm.
Like I was asking as a way to try and open up to get other information
Sure.
because I'd never had a single barrel from them before. As far as I know, like at least in my area, they had just started releasing them. So it's like just
Yeah.
nobody comes, nobody asks questions or goes to an event, well, almost no one, just to be a jerk. And if
Right.
we start from the perspective of just trying to remember, not everybody knows the same things and not everybody has the same information. What's
Mhm.
obvious to us now that we're kind of plugged into the headlines and the whatever of different things is not just in the general ether of the whole of the internet, and just to be respectful of that and as kind about it as you can be.
Yes, very great. Whereas then it kind of ties back to what we said earlier about like, don't be a snob, like be open, be accessible. Like, if someone asks you a question, your first, I mean, like, it's natural to think as experienced as a lot of us are, like, oh, they don't know. But like that's, you got to realize people come from all backgrounds. So people are, still doing, I don't want to say like fireball shots because like I do fireball shots sometimes too, but I'm just saying that people have a different spot on the journey and like it is a journey. So if someone's asking a question, like you said, they're not trying to be stupid, they're not trying to play dumb. They just might be curious. They want to learn. And I think, be accessible and being open to that.
Yeah.
I
And
saw some,
you never know what barriers have really been a problem for other people, and if you've never encountered things as barriers yourself. So yes.
Adriana says, we need Glens with good handles. That's such a good one. Hopefully anyone can appreciate. Oh my God, like a Glencairn with a coffee handle, maybe merch
Yeah, like
idea.
baby Irish coffee cups.
Yes, I like that. I'm going to look into that, Adriana. By the way, Stacy Four Leaf Whiskey's here. She said this is great info. I've hosted many tasting events. Embarrassed, I've never thought about some of this. Well, that's why we're doing this, having this open conversation. I think it shouldn't be embarrassing. It should be informative, and it's like I said, it's something that I don't think about often either, and it's something that we should think about. So don't feel embarrassed at all.
No, there are always things to learn.
Steven says I only drink out of red Solo cups. I believe it. I believe it. I'm getting caught up, making sure I didn't miss any questions. If I missed your question, feel free to ask it again in the chat. Chris said, "Are you calling us snobs because you mentioned marzipan? Like, don't don't describe it as marzipan." Oh, Chris.
No, never,
And
never you, Lil.
Stacy says, "Oh yeah, it could be a little too." Stacy says, "Unless you're a German baker, you probably don't know what marzipan is." Let's see. Oh yeah, people are just making jokes about crazy tasting notes. Oh, Bill's here. I know you called him out earlier, but I'm the most handsome man on Whiskey Tube. Surely you're talking about Novelist, my character on Dungeons and Drams. Y'all tune in every Monday morning, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 Eastern, Dungeons and Drams with Bill, Ed, the Rock Gut Review, Jason, the Mash and Drum, Adriana, the Whiskey Mountains. Wow, that is so hard. I'm not even drunk. I'm like,
Wait,
I'm
Monday morning, Clifton, or do you have new plans?
oh my
No.
gosh. Wait, what I say?
You said Monday morning.
Oh my gosh, Monday. Listen, I have taken some cold and fever medicine. I took some cough syrup earlier. I am feeling good, but I am also a little distracted. So Monday nights. Thank you, Emily.
Or isn't it Tuesday now?
No, it's Monday. Don't mess
Oh,
with it. It
wait,
was
sorry.
Tuesday. We moved to
That's
Monday.
right. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's all good.
That was my
I
fault.
believed you for a second. Just make sure I didn't miss any question. Bill said, I know it's not whiskey related, but when I was a junior engineer about 20 years ago, my first real job was about accessibility. It was interesting and I'm thankful for it. It opened my eyes to why it was so needed. Now, every bit of software that my people write is accessible as a rule, not an afterthought. That's really great to hear.
Yeah, it's much easier to design either software or events from the beginning, with accessibility and limiting barriers in mind. So, yeah.
And then the Bourbon Rich is here. What's up, Trev? He said,
Hey,
imagine
Trev.
someone being like that, though. People just suck. Can't even tell you the number of times someone asked me a question in the liquor store that sounds silly, but I answer it kindly. Yeah, I answer it kindly. Why suck? Exactly. Like you're gonna make an enemy. You could explain it nicely, and maybe that'll be their new favorite store. Maybe they'll be your highest buying customer. You never know, right?
Yeah. I
That's
had an experience at once at a place I don't go anymore where um, one of the managers of a liquor store that I had spent a reasonable amount of money in over the preceding like year, we went down in the strip mall to use the restroom somewhere else, and we were both waiting. And this woman who'd sold me several $100s worth of alcohol looks at me when the bathroom becomes free, holds my hand and is like, "Do you need me to help you?"
mhm.
And I'm like, "Lady, why would you think that I would like wait to use a restroom that I couldn't handle by myself?
Right.
Like if I were going to do that, and you've sold me like several $100s at least worth of alcohol. You don't think I'm responsible enough to know what I need to do with my own body?
Yeah, I think that's something
Like,
that a lot of people like fall like I get that like there's no ill will behind it, but it's also something that people, they're not used to that situation, right? And so like that's like you said, what's the best thing in that situation is just let, if you need help, you're gonna ask for it, right? You're not gonna just like have someone ask you, do you need help?
right. Well, and the thing is, if I were at an event with like a bunch of people from chat, I might ask a lot of the people that I already know and I already have a relationship with,
Right.
"Hey, can you help me with X, Y, or Z?"
Hmm.
But like some random that I've only ever seen doing their job at a liquor store, like why would I ask you
Right.
to do stuff in a position where I'm vulnerable? Like that's just creepy. Stop it.
Yeah, it's tough. Was this at their place of business or was this at like a different
No,
venue? Okay.
it was under the same ownership, but it wasn't their store.
Okay, because I was thinking like if maybe if it was theirs, they're like, oh shit, like maybe my bathroom's not as accommodating as it should be. But if it wasn't their place, then yeah,
Either
yeah,
way, I'm an adult. You don't need
yeah,
to like
right,
kneel down in front of my face and hold my hand.
yeah.
Thank
Oh
you.
yeah, no. I saw another comment that I'm shoot, my chat like jumped, so I missed some of them. Are there? Oh, this is a great question from Adriana. She said, "Are there any websites that provide checklists for trying to make general events more accessible?" Great question.
Um, I have not seen a good event checklist. I will look that up, Adriana, and I will, if I find a link, I will post it in various places.
Very cool. And then Jason Coates said, I come from a family of teachers. I love to teach. I don't get why you'd be shitty to someone who's trying to learn. Yeah, I don't think most of us would. It's just like we do see those people at some events, like some whiskey events. Maybe they just have had too much to drink and they think they're being funny. But I do see people being assholey about it. So it's definitely a
Mhm.
thing.
And yes, Bill, I will totally recruit tall people to grab
Oh, I see his
random things
comment.
from me whenever humanly possible. But like my issue on the more complicated side is I don't want you jumping in front of me. Like if you
Mm,
ask, that's the thing with asking and with access. Like it's totally cool to ask a question, but you have to be prepared to receive whatever answer you're given. So if somebody says, "Yes, please, thank you so much, that'd be great." Awesome. If somebody says, "No, thank you, I'm good," or "I need to do this myself," or for whatever reason, your job is not to question that.
mm.
Like you ask a genuine question, you accept a genuine answer.
And then Whiskey Mountain says she'd love that list, and she said she would love to make it available for other whiskey tubers who are planning events. Yeah, absolutely. I think those of us that are planning in-person events, maybe Las Vegas next year. I'm still thinking about maybe doing that. I would love to have that. Thankfully, with Vegas, a lot of the accommodations are in larger hotels, so they've already kind of thought of these things. But yeah, like even if like you said, like smaller events, like a checklist would be awesome. I'd love to look at that too. So yeah, if you find anything, please let me know.
Yeah, I'll see what I can find. And Bill, if you stand on me, I charge for rides.
Right. Well, you,
So
you mentioned before. I remember on our podcast you mentioned that people would like touch your chair or like do things like that. That was like super like not cool. Was that? Well, I know Bill was joking, but you said
yeah,
something
no,
before
and
like
Bill
someone's.
was totally joking.
Oh
But
no,
one of the
sorry, I wasn't
things,
calling Bill out. I was just saying
yeah,
like that you mentioned it on the podcast. I'd love
yeah,
to talk about it again.
one of the things I've said in both seriously and less seriously is, um, like I charge for rides, and they like the price starts at $100 and goes up.
Hmm.
And if you have to ask, like you probably can't afford it.
Hmm.
When people are being obnoxious. And it's
Right.
very different when it's somebody who I know or somebody who I have an established relationship. A important thing to remember is if somebody is using mobility or accessibility equipment, whether it's a mobility like a wheelchair walker type deal, or if it is um, like an iPad, phone, or cane, or whatever they're using to navigate the world. That is effectively, when you're out in public, an extension of their body. And if you wouldn't grab and inspect somebody's
Mm.
physical body,
Hmm.
you shouldn't grab and inspect and touch and feel up on their equipment
Yeah.
unless you know them intimately prior. That's gross and, you know.
Yeah. I saw a video of just this went viral. It was like probably about 6 months ago. I'm not sure if you saw, but it was like it was at a bar, and these like drunk like frat guys found a wheelchair at the top of the,
Oh, yeah. No,
and they just
I
shoved it down the stairs.
yeah, that was that was a whole thing because especially that particular bar, she that person was separated from her wheelchair specifically because she's known to the people at that bar and they have to like the restrooms were downstairs and she
Mm,
had like an understanding with the people who run the bar. So that's why she wasn't in her wheelchair.
mm,
And these drunk hockey player jerks
mm,
decided that they were going to destroy somebody's medical equipment for no good reason other than their own personal entertainment. One, wheelchairs are exceedingly expensive.
right.
And unless you plan on the wheelchair she had probably was easily $5,000.
Wow.
So, and that's not even a super fancy wheelchair.
Hmm.
Um, and the cost itself isn't even the hard part. The reality is getting a wheelchair, if you rely on one most of the time, it's not like you can just go to Walmart or Target or whatever and pick one up.
Right.
Even
Yeah.
it's not just about money itself. It takes a lot of time and effort and logistics to even get one. So unless you're not only going to have all the resources to replace all the things, but you're going to like regulate all the like you don't understand the consequences of doing that when you're messing with people's stuff. So just don't. If it's
Yeah.
not yours, don't touch it.
Why do we even have to say that, right? Like you should just think it's common knowledge. Like, but some people are just jerks, as we've been saying. Yeah, I'm thinking. I'm looking through my list of some of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about. One thing that's we talk about, it's not necessarily related to disabilities, but it's just about accessibility. I think something that's often not thought about is like closeness to like public transportation. Like I know a lot of times people
Yes.
have like a tasting that's some remote bar in the middle of nowhere, and then there's people that whether they don't have their own car, they can't afford a ride, but they want to go, or
Mhm.
even worse, they do have a car but they shouldn't be driving because they want to drink. Like there's so many things to think about. Like, but if you're near a place that is like a hub for that, they can get a ride on a bus, or they could get there very affordably and very safely. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, transportation is always an issue, especially when you're serving adult beverages to be
Yeah.
aware of. Um, a thing to be aware of too, though, is even if buses are accessible, bus stops are not always accessible
Mm,
to people with mobility issues. So just to keep that in mind when you're looking at things, or to ask people if you know them, if you know that to be an issue for them. And to answer Bill's question from earlier, I've seen Brandon, Wheels Brandon on Facebook,
okay.
off and on recently, but I have not seen him like in the whiskey tube areas very often. So I
Yeah,
recently, so I don't know what the deal is with that.
I haven't heard from him. I hope he's doing well, but yeah, I haven't heard from him in a while either. But Wills, if you're out there, hit me up. I think he messaged me one time. I think it was on like he's on a gaming platform. I don't know if it was PlayStation or Discord, but he did message me one time. But it's been a while, so hope you're doing well, buddy. We all are thinking of you. So yeah, but that's another part of the community that's or someone else that's in the community that does face these challenges, and I'd love to have a conversation with him about it at some point if he was interested in that. Let's see what else. Oh, I think another thing that we didn't really touch on too much is like people that do have maybe certain like mental disabilities or whether they're on the spectrum or things like that. I think something that could always be helpful. You kind of mentioned it a bit earlier, Emily, giving them something before the event, like to kind of like prepare them for what they're going to be tasting, like maybe a list of the whiskeys that they're going to try. But even better, after the event, maybe send a summary of here's everything we tried. Make it more accessible, make it like that way. If they're not able to fully grasp everything in the moment, let people do things on their own time. Because I think time is one of those things. Like even someone that just deals with like anxiety, like I think my mind goes to mush sometimes at tastings, and I don't really listen to everything going on. But if I have the info to digest on my own afterwards, I think I can appreciate something a bit more.
Yeah, sensory overload is a real issue. So maybe supplying earplugs at
Mm,
events in case people get stressed out. And
okay.
also a big thing that people may not think about is to have there not be a lot of loud music or sensory
Mm,
information on the in the restrooms, or
okay.
in sort of the breakout areas. So have there, if it's possible, like if somebody needs to use a restroom either to do personal care type stuff or just to take a breather, they don't really need to hear the music cranked up to 11, or extra themey stuff. Um, so just to be able to give people sensory breaks as much as you can and give people the space to do that, it's usually pretty helpful.
Yeah, and that's I think yeah. I did have a thing have a like a quiet space, and I think bathrooms. Why
Yes.
not? That's a great place. That's a
Mhm.
great place to get people to just recollect themselves, take a breather. Escape that. And yeah, so it's something again I don't think happens a lot because a lot of bar bathrooms I go to are very loud and they're blasting the music. They're keeping the party going. I'm like, you're in the bathroom. Like, what party do you need going on in here?
Yeah, there doesn't need to be a party in the bathroom generally. If you're going into the bathroom to party, you've brought your own supplies or you have your own phone to handle.
Oh yeah, some club bathrooms maybe, but not in my house. Well, I think I touched on all my points that I thought of bringing up. But is anyone in the chat or Emily? Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you'd like to talk a bit more about?
I think we covered most everything that I was thinking of, but if anybody else has other ideas, um, I'm more than willing to answer either now or later.
Yeah,
But
and
yeah.
Whiskey Mountain says, plus if you're hard of hearing, less music will help it be easy to help and like understand what's going
Mhm.
on. Absolutely. And another thing that like for on the accessible world in the world of newcomers, keep your pores small. Like, I mean, not to say that don't treat your guests, but it's like if you're treating some newcomers that have never had straight whiskey before, don't expect them to drink 10 ounces of whiskey that night and like be whiskey experts at the end of it. But like do themes, maybe like do like
Mhm.
tonight's a bourbon theme. We're tasting like 4 different bourbons, and then next week we'll do scotch. Like I know we tend to go overboard because like I know when I go to whiskey tastings, I bring like so many bottles, but we're not professionals. But we're like we know our limits. But people that are new,
Semi-pro.
yeah, of course. But people that are new may not know their limits, so that's something to keep in mind. Like when you're helping or treating a newcomer to it.
Yeah, a good rule of thumb, my grandmother always used to say was like, "You can always add more, but you can't put it back in a recipe." So, like, if you
Mm-hmm.
want more, it's generally speaking easy enough to get a little bit more if you want it, but especially in a mixed event, like, you can't really safely put it back in the bottle or
Right.
back in the tube, so just don't do that.
Yeah, well, especially if you're having someone pre-pour for you. Like a lot of times, like they'll allow you to pour for yourself, which is always great. You can use whatever limit you have for yourself, or. But I mean, even in those situations, Emily, I'm curious. Like, do you prefer someone to pour for you, or do you prefer to pour for yourself? I'm just curious. Like, what in your situation, what you prefer?
When it comes to pouring, unless it's like a bottle shape that I'm very familiar with, I will generally let other people pour because I don't wanna be responsible for effing up somebody's entire bottle.
Hmm.
If they
I've
drop their bottle, that's on them. That's I don't want that on me physically or fiscally, so
right. No, and I've done situations where because like when I'm like popping a cork off a bottle, I mean like some bottles are very easy to do with one hand, but like let's say this, let me put the
exactly.
cork back, the cork. Man, I almost messed up my word there again. This Knob Creek, like there is no physical way for me to remove this with one hand without. I usually typically this sounds weird, but I put it between my legs, grab the bottle, and then I pull the cork off that way.
I
But
do
sometimes
that
like
all
I
the
feel weird
time.
if it's someone's bottle that's like whether a nice bottle or just someone else's bottle. You don't want to like put it between your legs, unless they're into that. But like that's something I feel
That's an
uncomfortable with.
after party move,
Like,
Clifton.
right. But that's the thing, like that's something I always feel uncomfortable with when I'm at someone's house, like when I'm trying to open a bottle. I either discreetly kind of do that while I'm sitting, but like if you're in a crowd of people, it's super awkward. So like I've dealt with that myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So man, I can't even get this cork off now. Come on. There we go. There we go. I'm
Second
not ready in the drinking for the night, but Knob Creek. This is one of the old bottles, so like it's one of the old like wax things that make a mess everywhere.
Yeah.
Um,
I
yeah.
I won one of those Knob Creek the old style Knob Creek Ryes at one point. It was amazing.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I found this at funny enough a CVS that had a clearance section of all their whiskey and a lot of their like the canned cocktails were like for 75% off. So this Knob Creek Rye, this like full size bottle was like $12. I'm like hell yeah, so I grabbed it. I should have grabbed more. The sale ended, so I missed out. But
well, but you get to enjoy what you had, so cool.
Whiskey Dick says, never mind when you're trying to open a bottle that you think the integrity of the cork is compromised. Oh, like when it's like the cork could break. Yeah, that's a great point. We need to have distilleries watch the stream. Make your corks easier to open. Lil says Nika from the barrel is a bitch to pour from. Yeah, I don't know, Emily, if you've seen that. It's a really square bottle, but like when
I've
you pour,
seen it. I have
yeah,
not
it
attempted.
always spills. Like no matter how delicate you are, it's gonna pour down the side of it. It's so stupid.
But it's really pretty and decorative, but I
It is. It
can't
is
drink
pretty.
I can't drink the bottle, so I don't care about that as much.
Whiskey Dick says CVS carries whiskey. It depends on your state. It does in California. Our grocery stores, our pharmacies, yeah. There's alcohol everywhere here in California, which is crazy. But the bottle says cutest whiskey. Okay, now we're not criticizing whiskeys here. Save that for the after party. Speaking of after party, I think we're gonna wrap up this stream. Emily, thank you so much. I always value your input. You bring such a interesting and different perspective to things that like I would never think of. I'm sure plenty of people in the chat would never think of. So I just want you to know we appreciate you so much, and we appreciate you bringing awareness to one, telling me it's Disability Pride Month, which is so awesome, but also
Mhm.
just issues that people don't think of. And If anyone's watching the stream after the fact, I'm going to link to the checklist that we find. Someone will find a checklist on the internet to making your event more accessible. I would love to find a checklist. I'll put that in the comments below. But
Yep.
yeah, you guys don't forget to hit the thumbs up before you leave. Emily, anything else you want to say before we wrap up here?
So the Keep Life Rolling event that's that I have going on Give Butter for a nonprofit that I've been
Mhm.
working with is still a thing.
Okay.
So if you're interested in that and you have not donated yet, then that's a thing. Also, which I forgot to mention earlier, one of the things that we're looking at doing is once we find a grant to develop a disabled accessibility now I can't talk accessibility centered esports team.
Mm.
So look for more information coming in on that. So
Awesome. I was looking for a link to, if anyone has a link to the fundraiser that Emily mentioned, please drop it in the chat. I'm also going to pin it below the stream afterwards as well. Y'all go check that out. Support all these great causes. Bill was asking how much money are you looking to raise. I was going to say, do you have a link? I'm looking to see if anyone has a link. I'd love to feature in the chat.
I don't have it. Hold on.
I know you've shared it somewhere. I've seen it.
So I've shared it before. I don't know that I have it on this account. If I meant to pull it earlier, and that's the one thing I forgot, of course, because
it's all good. I'll pin it to the chat after the stream, so anyone can find it there. Cool.
Okay.
Well,
thank you so much. To answer the question, the initial goal for what we're doing right now, which is more to get equipment to keep people mobile and in their communities, currently is around $15,000 for this project, but we're looking at doing ongoing other projects as well. So stay tuned.
Awesome. Well, y'all, like I said, check out this stream afterwards. I'm going to pin all the info down below. Y'all make sure, Emily, you're welcome to join us for the after party if you want to come hang out.
I will drop in for a little bit once I get some more ice cubes going in my direction. But thank you guys so much for having me. Again, thank you for letting little old me with like no collection and a lot of snark be part of this community, because I really appreciate it a lot.
You are
so much.
One of the most valuable members here, so I
doubt that very seriously. But
I mean, you're a wrench, one of my very few bourbon wrenches. So
I take wench too. I have
I almost said wench. I'm like, oof.
Yeah,
am I allowed to say that as a white man? Am I allowed to call you a wench?
Well, here's the thing. I have a running gag that team wench is a thing that a lot of the female moderators and I kind of have developed. So it's hashtag team wench is a thing.
I've seen it. Yeah.
So yes, I'm gunning for merch to have that on it at some point. So
awesome.
Watch this space.
Will do. Well, I will see those of you on Patreon in our after party. Everyone else, check out Patreon for as little as $2 a month. You can support the channel, get access to some fun things like our 80s movie night, our after party that's about to happen right now. And the higher tiers get you access to some fun things like monthly curated tastings. So patreon.com/bourbon bites. Check it out. Emily, thank you again. I will see you all next week. Bye, guys. Bye, Emily.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.